When my younger sister was taken to the emergency room in the middle of the night, I called my parents again and again. One after another, then FaceTime, then voicemail, then I typed 3 words in the family group chat. Call me now. I was sitting in a hard, cold chair in the emergency room at Memorial Hermann in Houston. Small, dark stains of my sister Eve's blood on my jeans, my hands still shaking. She was only 19. 2 hours earlier, she had been curled up on the kitchen floor of my apartment, clutching her stomach, saying she couldn't take the pain anymore. I didn't call an Uber. I grabbed my keys and drove like every red light didn't matter. She was folded in the passenger seat, letting out small, broken sounds every time the car hit a bump. The fluorescent lights in the ER make everything feel harsh. There's no softness there, just white light, the sharp smell of antiseptic, a baby crying somewhere down the hall, and the steady beeping of monitors. The triage nurse took her inside while I stood at the check-in desk giving insurance details, ID, phone numbers. I called our mom, Lorraine, first, then our dad, Mark, then both at the same time, and again. My mom's phone rang until it went to voicemail. My dad's went straight to silence, then voicemail. I even opened the church group chat, knowing people were usually still online after Wednesday night prayer dinners. I didn't type anything. I just sat there feeling anger and fear building together inside my chest. A resident doctor came out and pulled me aside. He said they strongly suspected a ruptured appendix and that the infection was spreading fast. I watched his lips move more than I heard the words. Sepsis risk. Emergency surgery. Consent. Family. Her parents, he asked. On their way, I said. That was the last night I ever lied for them. They let me see Eve for 2 minutes before surgery. Her hair was damp and stuck to her forehead. Oxygen tubing rested under her nose. She reached for my hand, not with full strength, but enough to tell me she needed to say something. She opened her eyes halfway and whispered, "Did they answer?" I shook my head. "No, but I'm here." She looked at me like she already understood something I didn't want to face yet. Then she said, "Hi, backpack. Side pocket." A nurse stepped in and I had to move away. I stood in the hallway and called again. 12th time, 13th, 14th. Then I left a voicemail. Mom, Dad, this is not drama. This is not one of your lectures. Eve is in the OR. Call me now. My own voice sounded strange. Flat, dry, almost too calm. Around 4 o'clock in the morning, the surgeon came out. Tired eyes above his mask. He said her appendix had ruptured. The infection had spread too far. They did everything they could, but the complications were severe. I didn't hear the rest. I put my hand on the wall just to stay steady. I remember the vending machine in the waiting room being out of blue Gatorade. I remember a late-night infomercial playing on the TV, selling an air fryer. I remember a janitor mopping near me and apologizing for getting too close. And through all of it, my parents never called back. When I opened Eve's backpack, there was a folded envelope in the side pocket. Just 2 words on the front. For June. Inside were 4 pages of college-ruled paper. Her handwriting neat but rushed. I read the first line and immediately closed it because my hands were shaking too much to hold it steady. But I saw one line at the end, written bigger, pressed harder into the paper. If they act innocent, read this out loud. At 7 o'clock that morning, my mom finally called back. I could hear waves in the background. I didn't say anything. June, honey, I saw your calls. We were in Galveston. The signal was awful. What happened? That tone, the one she used at church potlucks. Soft, polished, like everything in life was a performance. She died, I said. There was a pause, then a scream that wasn't fully grief, part shock, part guilt, part fear of what people would say. My dad took the phone. What do you mean she died? She was fine yesterday. No, she wasn't, I said. And I called you 14 times. He cut me off with questions. Which hospital? Who signed? What happened first? Body release. Funeral home. He handled grief like a spreadsheet, boxes, logistics, appearances. When I asked why they were in Galveston, there was a slight delay before he said, we needed a night away. That's when I understood this wasn't just neglect. It was priority. From the outside, our family looked perfect. A neat brick house in a cul-de-sac in Cyprus. 2-car garage. My dad's Silverado. My mom's white SUV. Sunday church. Thanksgiving dinners, matching smiles on Facebook. But inside there was always a ranking system. Rules for me, image for Eve, control for my mom, silence for my dad. Eve was the sunshine of the family, but the truth was she carried everyone's emotional weight. When my mom got upset, Eve mediated. When my dad went cold for weeks, Eve made jokes to soften the room. When I left for nursing school at 18, she was 13. And from that day on, she was stuck between them. The days after the ER felt like a long, cold hallway. Funeral home meetings, death certificates, church calls, casseroles, lilies, people placing hands on my shoulder saying, she was such a light. My parents built the narrative quickly. Sudden medical tragedy, God's timing, devastating loss. They never told anyone they missed their daughter's calls while she was dying. They never told anyone I was sitting alone in that hospital while they drank wine on a beach rental deck. I read Eve's letter again and again. She wrote clearly about the last 6 months at home. My mom's obsession with maintaining the family image. My dad always saying, not now. And then the name Ross Haueryn, my dad's business partner, a major church donor, the man who was always around on weekends when my dad had client dinners. Eve wrote that he wasn't just a partner. He was having an affair with my mom. She saw them kissing near the pantry. Heard them arguing in the garage. And one night, Ross told my mom that if I ever found out, she'd burn the whole house down. The worst part, she'd told my dad. And he said, stay out of grown people's mess. I showed the letter to my friend Tasha, a paralegal at a probate law office. We sat in a Starbucks corner, her oat milk latte untouched, my coffee cold. She read it and looked up. Your sister knew exactly what she was doing. Is this a revenge letter? I asked. It's a witness statement, she said. The funeral was held at our church that Saturday, a full week later. Enough time for casseroles to fill the fridge, neighbors to leave flowers on the porch, and my mom to hug everyone just long enough to look like she was shattered. I said nothing. I let them talk. Let them organize. Let them approve the obituary calling Eve a beloved daughter, loyal friend, bright spirit. When people think you're broken, they stop watching you closely. The church was full. Soft gray dresses, dark suits, low murmured prayers, the smell of perfume and coffee. Eve's framed senior photo sat at the front. The one where her braces were finally off and she felt pretty for the first time. I sat in the front pew, my mom on my left, my dad on my right. My mom kept reaching for tissues, but spent more time scanning the room. Who came? Who didn't? What they wore. My dad's jaw stayed tight. When the pastor said the microphone was open for family, my mom adjusted her heels. She was about to stand. I stood first. I walked to the pulpit with Eve's letter in my hand. The room fell into that deep, padded silence only churches have. I adjusted the mic, looked at Eve's photo, then at the crowd, then at my parents. I didn't bring a planned speech, I said. I'm here to read what Eve left for me before she went to the hospital. June, my mom said sharply. Not now. For the first time in my adult life, I ignored her. I unfolded the letter and started reading. Eve's voice filled the room. She wrote about being tired of carrying grown-ups' lies. Tired of my mom's smiling photos, tired of my dad's silence, tired of being the person who knows everything but belongs nowhere. People started shifting in their seats. In the front row, Ross Hauer'n sat beside his wife, his face draining of color line by line. When I reached the part where Eve wrote, "Mom thinks nobody sees what she's doing with Ross Hauer'n, but I saw enough, and Dad knows enough. If anything ever happens and they stand there acting innocent, say his name out loud," the entire church seemed to hold its breath. I looked up. Ross Hauer'n. The name echoed like a bell. His wife stood up first. Didn't sit back down. Just stared at him. My mom hissed, "That is a lie." My dad tried to grab my arm, but I stepped back and kept reading. Dad told me to stay out of grown people's mess. But I'm tired of being the wall holding up everyone else's house. The room split the way it does when truth lands where it's supposed to. Some people looked down. Others stared straight ahead, finally seeing the full picture. Ross's wife turned on him right there in the aisle. "You dragged me into this church," she shouted. The pastor tried to intervene, but it was too late. My mom tried to reach the pulpit, but Tasha stepped up beside me, silent, steady. I didn't fold the letter at the end. I read it clean. Then, after the service, I handed out copies. Yes, copies. 8 of them. One for the pastor, one for Ross's wife, one for a church board member who turns gossip into prayer requests, one for the funeral director, one for myself, one for Tasha, 2 extras. The fallout started before the service even ended. Ross's wife left him in the parking lot and drove off. My dad went after her and she shoved his hand away. My mom cornered me outside. "You humiliated me at your sister's funeral. You humiliated yourself a week ago," I said. Today, people just saw it. My dad's face was red. "You don't know the whole story." "I know I called you 14 times, I said. "And I know Eve was more honest dying than you've ever been living." Revenge isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just placing the truth in the right room at the right time in front of the right people and letting it do the rest. Within 3 days, the church board removed Ross from the finance committee. His wife filed for separation. My dad's business partnership froze when someone finally looked at the books and found misuse of funds. My mom sent me a 10-page text, blame, excuses, Bible verses, guilt, then voicemails, then silence. I didn't respond once. I started a small scholarship in Eve's name for nursing students. Tasha helped with the paperwork. A surgeon from the hospital donated anonymously. I changed my work shifts, and for the first time in weeks, I slept through the night. My parents still live in the same house, but the neighborhood doesn't see them the same anymore. They stopped going to church. Facebook went quiet. The pumpkins didn't show up on the porch that fall. Ross tried to leave town, but gossip travels faster than GPS. Me, I live with the grief. Eve isn't coming back. Her laugh, her messy ponytails, her cheap vanilla spray. I carry them with me. But one thing she taught me, don't be the wall that holds up other people's lies. The last time I folded her letter and placed it in a box, I traced her name and said it out loud.